I'd like to call the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee meeting to order, please.
Sure. Looks like you got what we were hoping to accomplish.
We'll have roll call.
Ms. Beebe.
Present.
Ms. Beebe is present.
Present.
Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett is absent. Ms. Bofi.
Here.
Ms. Bofi is present. Ms. Bradford.
Here.
Ms. Bradford is present. Ms. Destug. Ms. Destug is present. Mr. Garvey.
Here.
Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Gio.
Here.
Mr. Gio is present. Ms. Hill.
Present.
Ms. Hill is present. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Lee is present. Ms. Orange Jones.
Present.
Ms. Orange Jones is present. Mr. Romer. Mr. Romer is present. You have a quorum.
Thank you.
Your consent agenda is ready for approval, and Ms. Bofi's added a couple of items, so you may want to go over this with me, if you will. We're adding items 4.1, which is starred, 4.3, 5.1, 6.3, and 6.6, and noting that 6.3 and 6.6 are NOIs, and we're also pulling item 2.2 from consent.
May I get a motion?
So move to approve the agenda as revised.
Thank you. A second?
I second.
Thanks. Next item, please.
Okay, your first item is item 2.2 on page 5. Consideration of approval of non-public school academic classifications. The department recommendation is to approve.
I'll move approval.
Ms. Bofi,
Yes.
I would like to offer a motion that agenda item 2.1, consideration of requests from local education agencies for waivers of policy contained in bulletins submitted by the state superintendent of education, and agenda item 2.2, consideration of approval of non-public school academic classifications become standing items on the Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee agenda.
Standing items?
Yes, so that we want to make these standing items rather than consent.
Do we have a second?
I don't understand it.
She wants to remove these from consent and add them as standing items.
So these are a reference to a waiver and also approval of the non-public 2.1 and 2.2 if you
Well,
look back at the agenda.
Couldn't she just request, the norm, to my knowledge, in the past has been, if you want an item removed from the consent agenda, you just ask that it be heard.
Well, that's true, but it's part of a consent agenda, and we just thought moving forward that they would just be included as standing items just to avoid having to go to that extra step. But
Madam Chairman, I mean, I think Mr. Lee is correct. The board always has the prerogative, just as we just did on 2.2, to pull an item off the consent agenda to be discussed and acted on by the board. For example, item 1.1 is not a standing item. It comes up periodically. I don't believe it's appropriate to be a standing item, nor would I. So I don't support the
withdraw
motion.
my motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Beebe, I would suggest if you want to discuss item 2.1, that you ask the chairman the board to reconsider their motion.
No,
and then-
actually, it's two.
We pulled 2.2 already.
Okay, it's cool.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So we need a recommendation, a motion and a second for item 2.2.
I think Mr. Romer made a motion to approve. I'll second.
Thank you. You're the second?
Yes.
Thanks. Do we have discussions?
Yes, this is item 2.2. I just have a concern that we're making an exception here with regard to their request to be approved, and there are other entities. I can identify one from my parish that would probably want to ask to be approved, after the fact. I just think that we shouldn't approve this request, because we did, if I'm not mistaken, a month or so ago, we approved this group for the 2012-13 school year. They're asking us to go back to approve them for the 11-12 school year. So is this correct?
The motion is to approve effective immediately, is what the motion is for.
Well, I just think it would set a precedent, you know, that you could have other entities coming forward to ask for approval from this board. And I think that if we have established procedures and timelines, that we have to adhere to those timelines. So in essence, they would be in violation of a timeline. Am I correct? So they're asking for approval because they didn't meet that timeline.
If I may, I know this school has some particular circumstances.
But they all do, or could. But
Mr. Romer?
Mr. Romer, excuse me.
That also involves some international students in the exchange, and that they needed the qualification to be approved immediately, or they would lose opportunity for that exchange. And you know, under those circumstances, I thought the exception was warranted.
And BESE, as I appreciated, actually authorizes schools on a rolling basis for to be approved non-public schools. I think in this case we just have a pragmatic situation in front of us where we do need to make this determination if children are to receive a standard diploma, and so this is ultimately not a question of whether or not the schools are going to get approved. It's a question of whether or not we're going to do it on a timeline that would allow these three students to receive their diplomas, which seems only fair given that it's extenuating circumstances.
Anyone else? We do not have any cards on this particular item. Wait, so right now we need to take a vote. Okay. Are there any objections? Hearing none. We have one objection. Hearing one, motion carries.
Your next item is on page 6, item 3.1, consideration of a revised State Perkins implementation plan. The department recommendation is to receive.
I move.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussions? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries.
Okay, your next item is on page 10, item 4.2, consideration of the requirement regarding further medical examination of a special school teacher who has requested sabbatical leave. The department recommendation is to approve.
I move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this item? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries.
We're going
Okay.
easy on you, Ms. Bopey.
Your next item is on page 35, 6.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 1706, regulations for implementation of the Children with Exceptionalities Act regarding the transfer of adjudicatory and hearing functions from the Louisiana Department of Education to the Division of Administrative Law. The department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Bradford. Is there any discussion? Yes, Ms. Beebe.
Bopey, I see that this is a recommendation from the Special Ed Advisory Panel, and I'm just curious as to why the transfer from, I guess, the Department of Ed to the Administrative Law, Division of Administrative Law, and in response, the cost factor involved. Is this going to be a financial increase?
No, in fact, it will not require costs. It will be a cost saver on the education side, which is in part the impetus for this. This is actually meant to bring this in line with what state law determines be the process. And it's just a clarification to bring regulation in line with the statutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. White.
Anyone else? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing none, motion carries.
Okay,
What's
your
the
next
next item?
item is item 6.2 on page 39, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators, Section 2325, Advanced Placement and International Baccalaureate. The department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
I'll make a motion to approve, and if there's a second, I'd just like to make a comment.
Second.
Thank you. This is an issue that the board has, really been pushing on, and I appreciate the progress that we've made on this. I think I'd like to note that I read in North Carolina that their state board just approved that every high school student would take at least one AP class every year in their high school career. So while this is a nice step, and it took us a long time to get here, and this is a long-term phase-in, of what I consider to be sort of a bare minimum for our high school students, other states are just going at a much more rapid pace and increasing expectations and opportunities for our high school students. So I would encourage that we step this up. Thank you.
Yes, Ryan?
I would just like to, touche to Ms. Destigue. My high school is a smaller high school, and we only have certain amounts of AP classes, and every class that I've taken has given me a great opportunity to expand my realm of knowledge and just kind of up the ante of my education. And so I thank the board for this.
And I'd like to note that he is attending Tulane University in the fall, my alma mater, so quite proud of him.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Beebe?
Ms. Balky, as I recall, I want to say it was January, there were several school districts that were not in compliance with AP, and they asked for a waiver, and I don't know if it was just oversight on the timeline, but in the event, we have the small rural schools, if we would have, say, a small group of students wanting to take the AP courses, do we have a process in place to assist, Mr. White?
I think this gets to Ms. Dastigue's point in part. This regulation is actually somewhat superseded by recent legislation, which actually ensures that if children are eligible or high school students are eligible when they want to take the course, the school must make it available if they don't currently offer it, meaning that if it requires the use of technology, that they must make that available, and thus, in a certain respect, the law has somewhat leapfrogged this regulation. This regulation is the continuation of the recommendations of the AP task force. It's also important to note that if the board approves today's measure, that we will be announcing steps to train teachers statewide on advanced placement practices. We'll be announcing a state initiative to train more than 300 teachers across the state in advanced placement, to offer more than 8,500 free test takings for advanced placement. I'm a former AP teacher myself and understand deeply the strength of this initiative. And so I think we're actually in a place now where legally every school must offer access to it. But we do need to recognize, as you say, that some schools won't be able to do it just in the four walls of a classroom. They'll need to use technology, whether it's sharing it with a teacher in another parish, which happens now, or whether it's doing it from a provider elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments? Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. What's the next item?
Next item is 6.4 on page 43, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators, Section 1703, textbooks. The department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
We need a motion. Is this 6.5?
6.4, page 43.
Okay, thank you, sorry. We need a motion.
I'll move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on this item?
Yes, I
Ms. Beebe?
need clarification, because as I read this, what we're saying is that we're lifting the stipulations from those districts who purchase from the state-approved list. In other words, we don't have to adhere to a state-approved textbook.
Well, there's somewhat of a false nomer here, which is that there is a textbook budget. There actually, as you know, is not a textbook budget. The state does not allocate specific dollars for textbooks, and so schools purchase from their MFP. The current regulations create somewhat of a false impression that there is a textbook budget and that schools are limited in choosing what they should purchase from their budget by what is on the state-approved list. This proposes to basically make it clear to districts that they should purchase what they want to purchase. In the law, it's required that BESE operate an approval process of textbooks. It is not required, actually, that schools purchase from that list, although that is common practice to do so. And frankly, I think we're moving in a direction in this country that's beyond a state having a curriculum that it publishes every year that's separate from the other 50 states, and moving from the idea that the local state approves text, when our standards really are now across states. So this is really just to clarify for districts that they're empowered. The state is still by law going to run an approval process, but we're empowering the districts to choose to use their money in the best way they see fit, especially because there really is not any textbook budget in the first place.
But when you say the state will still have the approved textbook list, am I correct, or?
Yes.
There will be, yes.
You're just giving, you're just taking away the thought, if you will, that you have to comply with certain expenses and so forth.
That's right.
That you have money allocated for that.
Yeah, that's right. You use the list as you see fit.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion on this item? Is there any opposition to the item? Hearing none, motion carries. What's our next item?
Next item is item 6.5 on page 45. Consideration of revisions to Bulletin 111, Louisiana School District and State Accountability System regarding end-of-course tests, proficiency levels for the annual measure of measurable objectives, removal of policy related to the GEE, and the use of graduation cohorts in SBS calculations. The department recommendation is approved as a notice of intent.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there a discussion on this item?
If I could just call board members' attention to this, there's cleanup in this that basically changes some language to fall in line with changes in the law and so on. There really is, in my view, one item of substance here that you should note because it is a departure. We have frankly, a very low percentage of our students taking rigorous coursework, and I think Ms. Dastug referred, just to give you a sense of this, only 5.6% of our kids pass an AP test by the time they graduate. The national average is 18, much less, strong states like North Carolina. Similarly, that really doesn't start in high school. That starts in middle school or even before with how on level kids are and what their course progression has been. And especially in math, where you take a logical course progression of Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry on up, or geometry, Algebra 2 on up. If you don't take Algebra 1 in middle school, you are unlikely to advance to taking an advanced placement level math course in high school, just by virtue of the time you're 12 years old. So we have an extremely low number of our kids in the teens, percentage-wise, taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. Algebra 1 is best practice and standard practice in many states to be taken in 8th grade. We have less than a fifth of our kids taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. Our accountability system reinforces that by not giving middle schools credit for those kids doing well on the end of course exam. And frankly, they do tend to do well. They do better than the high school population on that end of course exam because they've been selected to take this course. This is a proposal to give the high school credit for these kids. In other words, don't take away from the high school, but give the middle school a bonus when that child takes an end of course test and passes that end of course test in 8th grade. And that's what this proposal is for. Whereas currently the middle school accountability system does not speak to that. This is a proposal to give them the middle school credit for doing it and create an incentive for middle schools to get our kids taking 8th grade or Algebra 1 in 8th grade.
That's great policy.
The only question I had was why we would count it twice for the high schools, and I see what you explained that. I still question that, though, in that, do the high schools really deserve that credit?
Well, it's not really that you're crediting it, it's basically that you're not taking away. So in other words, the child is, or the student is going to have passed that test because they passed it in 8th grade. So you kind of have a question of, do you take it away when you average out their end of course, or do you just put it in saying, we're not giving them anything extra, but
Create a zero.
right, we're not going to create a zero, in other words.
We're trying to
Yeah.
not create a zero
Right.
to the high school because the child was successful.
Right.
in middle school.
And that's the status quo. The key piece here is the bonus for middle school, which is, that's not the way it's currently done. And as a result, there's frankly not any incentive in our accountability system to have a student taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. If they don't take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, they pretty much are behind the ball when it comes to ensuring that they have a shot at taking calculus or advanced placement work in mathematics generally, and that's what we're trying to change.
Is there any other discussion?
I just would like to say amen to Superintendent White. The students, we have maybe 6 students in my calculus class, and it's all of us who took Algebra 1 in 8th grade.
There you
And
go.
so, I'm an example. You have a student witness to that.
Thank you. I had a question about, on page 47, it says the graduation index calculated from the schools, and we're crossing out second and saying first graduating class, so I'm on page 47. So I was just curious as to why the change.
And I'm sorry, for some reason I'm missing the regulation. Which line are you talking about?
Over here.
Oh, this is a shift that basically says, rather than waiting for having 2 graduation cohorts in order to start factoring in your cohort graduation rate to your school performance score, we're going to do it based on your first graduating cohort. There are schools that are phasing in, and our policy before waited an additional year to give them, in essence, credit for their graduation rate in their school performance score. So we instead are going to say, after your first graduating class, you're going to get that counted in your school performance score. This is in great part an issue in New Orleans, where you have new schools that are starting up that are having to wait longer to get that graduation credit counted in their score, and we're saying we would count it after their first graduation cohort rather than waiting for 2 cycles of classes to graduate.
So we'll have scores on them sooner with this
They will
policy.
get credit for their graduation rate in their accountability score earlier than they would have before. Just after they start graduating kids, they'll start getting credit for it rather than us waiting for the second graduating class.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. What's our next item?
Next item is item 6.7 on page 50. Consideration of revisions to Bulletin 118, statewide assessment standards and practices related to the use of administrative error test results in calculating the school performance score. The department recommendation is to approve as a notice of intent.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so Ms. Dastu moved and Ms. Bradford second.
The board members, this is in relation to a specific case that I believe was recommended by Ms. Beebe be taken out of order. The specific case basically said that when tests are, when there is an error in the administration, there's some concern about malfeasance, that those tests can be counted as zeros, and that is standing board policy. If there's been an accusation of finding of cheating and so on, that our tests are zeroed out and they're not counted in the SPS of the school. The board has the ability to waive that policy and has waived it from time to time. And I think that the reasons for waiving are not specifically spelled out. We believe that we can craft a policy that spells out the conditions for waiving, and that in doing that would encourage districts to do the right thing. I think you'll see in the case that's presented later that in the instance of the Terrebonne Parish School System, they did the right thing by, in essence, saying we are aware that there was a bad actor, we took the corrective actions against that person, and in the circumstances, we re-administered the test. They did the right things. They re-administered the test, they paid for it, they sought corrective action, punitive action against the violator. And we should have a policy that promotes that and doesn't say, no, absolutely, we won't count it. It doesn't have vague standards. If you do the right thing, your scores should be counted in our view. And thus, we are proposing that the rule be changed to spell out what is doing the right thing. And that's what this spells out.
Madam Chairman, I would like to note, though, that in the LEA would still come to the board for the waiver approval. Am I correct?
Absolutely. This does not change that. It would still be to request a waiver. It would just spell out a little bit more, what do you do to get the waiver?
Thank
The
you.
process. I'd like to say that I appreciate this, so that our districts know that when they're doing the right thing, that they're going to get the support that they need, and that is encouragement for them. Is there any other discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. What's our next item?
Your last item is item 7.1. It's on page 52. Consideration of recognizing Mr. Ryan Hitchens for his service as the 2011-2012 student representative on the BESE Academic Goals and Instructional Improvement Committee, and to introduce Mr. Alex Nakan, who will serve as the 2012-2013 student representative.
Is there a motion?
To receive.
Thank you, Ms. Beebe. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Guillot. Ms. Bradford, would you like to say a few words?
Absolutely. I just cannot say enough positive things about this young man. He has certainly been a great representative on our board. He has been bold in his comments, and they've usually been right on track and helped us oftentimes make tough decisions because we had a viewpoint that gave us the right information. I know that he is going to be successful in whatever he does. I know that whatever path he takes, he will find success because he is positive in his thinking. He is adventurous in his innovations, and I think that he is also generally a kind and good person. And so we have been very blessed and fortunate to have had him serve with us this year on this committee. And as the co-chair of that committee, I do say to you, thank you so much, Ryan, for your service, and thank you for your dedication to the children and the students of Louisiana. Godspeed, and we wish you well.
Speech.
Okay. I actually do have a short one. I'd like to begin with the words of Martin Luther King, and he said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moment of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." In a time such as this in Louisiana education, I challenge each board member to stand. Not for your political position or alliance, not for your re-election campaign, not for your personal morals and values, but stand for the children around the state of Louisiana who are counting on you to make decisions that will improve the quality of their education. Thank you for the opportunity to stand with you this past year. Although I will no longer be your student representative, I will continue to stand for the success and ultimate comeback of Louisiana education. I am humbled and grateful for the opportunity to be a part of such a historic board. Thank you.
Ryan, if you'll come up, we do have a small token of our appreciation, and I have to just tell you that this child pops up everywhere. I was a student council advisor when I was in the classroom, and so I knew Ryan in that role, and then I was elected to serve on BESE, and here he is again. The other day, I was visiting a Beauregard Parish school system, and wouldn't you know, he was representing that district as their student of the year. So you just don't know where you're going to see Ryan next, and I'm happy that we've had the opportunity to have him serve with us.
Mr. Superintendent? Good luck.
Now, Mr. Hinchins, before we let you off the hook, we would like an introduction of our new student representative.
Mr. Alex Knockin possesses the technique and character of a leader. He is the epitome of servant and is a respected example in his school and community, receiving the Honor and Integrity Award in addition to his service throughout his community and his school's Future Reformers of America Club and Student Council. Alex is a man of character. One of the most impressive of his many accolades is how, following the oil spill along the Gulf Coast, Alex got up from watching the news and co-founded a nonprofit organization, Sassafras Louisiana Incorporated, with the help of respected businessmen and women in his community to bring help and hope to the Gulf Coast. I have full confidence in Alex's abilities to serve as the voice for the hundreds of thousands of students he represents on this board. My advice to you is listen to Alex. He is articulate and intelligent and will make all of us proud. Please join me in welcoming your new student representative to the board, Mr. Alex Knockin.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd just like to welcome him and say we have a lot of work to do, and I hope that you're ready to roll up your sleeves and get work.
And Madam Chair, and I think you see that you have big shoes to fill.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Ms. Beebe?
Yes, Ms. Bofi, I want to thank Ryan. Ryan, although I didn't serve on BESE last year, I certainly watched you in action, and I know that you're going to go places. You're very articulate. You have demonstrated your leadership abilities. I salute you, and I wish you the best in future endeavors. And I would also like to add that Alex represents District 3 BESE, so Alex and I will have a good time this year in the next 3 years addressing BESE issues and concerns. So I do welcome you aboard, Alex. I'm very proud of you, and certainly in conversation with you, I know you possess great leadership abilities as well. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, and thank you, Ryan, for those kind words. And I look forward to serving this board and doing the best that I can to represent Louisiana Association of Student Councils, the students, and most of all, my parish. And I'm proud to be here, and I thank you all.
Is there any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? Motion carries. Welcome, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our meeting.
Board members, if you'd stay seated, we're going to immediately start the next meeting.